Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it the why and the buy.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Why and the Buy podcast. I'm here with Christie Walters, my better half. She's way better than half of this podcast. Christie, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I love making you laugh. That's the best part about saying weird stuff at the beginning.
Well, and there you go. And I have to chuckle every time I listen to the podcast because all you can hear in the background is me just like this low-level chuckle all throughout the entire podcast. I would love to tell you I could turn that off. I cannot. It is just the way it is. I hope people love me for it anyway. So
I do my best not to edit that part out because it's worth it.
Right.
So we were supposed to have a guest today, and through circumstances out of our control, we don't have a guest today. So we're going to do something that we've not done in a long, long time. And
we're going to wing it?
We're improv in this one.
I love it. That's awesome.
Improv in this one, baby. So something has come up recently. I've run into this with some clients as of late. I have run across this on some of the social challenges, some of the social channels, speaking of improv. Motivation. What gets you out of bed every day? Do you really want to be the best at what you do? Are you really just punching in because someone's got to pay you for your time or for your service or for what you do? Or do you really have a passion and a drive for what it is that you do? And that is the challenge that I am issuing to all of our listeners, Christie, is what do you really want to do? What do you really want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
One of my favorite kind of just half tongue-in-cheek questions. But what's been your experience with this, Christie? And I'm curious where you're going to take this question because it is vague on purpose. But I do have a place where I want to take this too.
Okay, you're gonna keep me guessing. So, what gets me out of bed every day? It's interesting for me, Jeff, as you know a little bit more about my journey maybe than some of our listeners do. But a couple of years ago, I was working in the same career that I had been in for the last 25 years. I'd been managing sales and marketing teams at various levels for multiple technology companies. And I love small companies, so I always gravitated to the next big thing. Whatever that company that was doing something just a little bit out of the ordinary, a little bit unique, I wanted to be there. And unfortunately, a lot of times those companies run out of money. They have challenges that kind of move things around. The board goes in a different direction. It really creates a level of volatility in your career. And so I was laid off.
I watched Silicon Valley, so I know all about the ups and downs.
You know all about the ups and downs of the startup environment, right? So I've been there, and I have been there with multiple companies. And I work with a coach, and I have for years. And she and I had several conversations, and I was like, I just don't feel motivated. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I love the products that I represent, but I just don't. There's just not a fire in my belly. And she's like, oh, well, let's just go and make a list of all the companies you want to go work for that'll give you that fire in the belly. I couldn't come up with a single one. So I said, you know what? I think that's the universe, God, whatever it is you believe in, pushing me down a different path.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, I've had it in the back of my head for a long time now that I wanted to get into speaking, training, and coaching. So maybe it's just time to just jump off the cliff and make that happen.
You know, that's really funny is that sometimes it's not until you look in the rearview mirror and you see some of these themes that have been present for your entire career that maybe you've tried to suppress or maybe you just didn't notice until you could look backwards, that you notice that those themes are there.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up in a very traditional household. So for me, a career path went a handful of different ways.
Sure.
And it was always your objective to go to the next level. And I never really stopped to think about what a completely different path might look like. And so when I finally found one, I really found my motivation. That fire in the belly is what gets me up every single day. And there's a quote that I love, and it says, the ability is what you're capable of doing. So I have the ability to be one of the best speakers, trainers, and coaches in our marketplace. Motivation determines what you do with your ability, and attitude determines how well you do it.
Wow.
So every morning I wake up with the recognition that whatever I'm not capable of doing today, I'm investing in so that I'm capable of doing it tomorrow. And I'm motivated to do it because I know it's making a difference in people's lives. And my attitude is through the roof because I just love it, right? I'm good at it. I love it. I love the people I'm interacting with, and I love the impact I see it making in people's lives. That was a really long answer.
No, it's a good one, though.
To a short question.
Good. Those are the best kind, right? But,
yeah, right.
But you have the desire to do that. You have
Yes.
that fire in your belly.
Yeah.
That is something that I am seeing a lack of.
Yeah.
It's not just salespeople, it's everybody, but we have a sales and business, marketing, leadership kind of audience. So you can be in front of an audience, and there are going to be 10 to 20% of that room who just doesn't care who's at the front of the room.
Right.
I never totally understood that. I can understand that there are people like that, but I'm not walking into a room if I'm not going to take something out of it.
Right.
If there's a speaker, then I want to learn what that speaker has to say, or I want to learn something about that speaker because I speak too, or I want to learn something that I can apply. Because listen, if someone's up there talking for an hour, this is part of the paradox of our business. If you have the right thing and you can deliver it in 30 seconds, it doesn't matter what you say for the other 59 minutes and 30 seconds, right? But They're paying you for the hour, so you got to kind of put some other stuff in there, right? Be entertaining, be memorable, that's fine. But all I need is the 30 seconds. And when I see a speaker coming in for an hour, that gives me 60 minutes. It gives me 120 potential 30-second increments that I can pull something from. Yet, there are more and more people out there who are just saying, I don't really want to be here. I don't care. So Facebook's interesting. Candy Crush is interesting. Angry Birds is interesting. If I put my headphones in and make it look like I'm on the phone or listening to a conference call or something else. I mean, there's just so many ways to avoid it. And what really gets frustrating is when those people are not motivated to get any better, and then regardless of how much help you offer them, they're not going to take anything from it. I think it's really frustrating if you're a sales manager out there and you were one of the top 10 people, on your sales team, and you got promoted and you have all of these intuitive, natural, you had this drive, and that this just makes sense to you, that I can make more money, I can be more successful if I make the investment in myself, if I'm interested in getting better at all. And then when you turn around and you offer some of the things that you would have killed to have as just a bag-carrying sales rep, and then they don't take it, oh man, it just grinds you down, because what is there, what you're offering, and then there's still people that just won't take advantage of it, but then they'll gripe that they're not making enough money.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think there are a couple of different layers to what you just described too. One is that not all salespeople are the same, right? You and I are very different salespeople. We work really well together, but we are very different personalities. And oftentimes as leaders, I think we look at what motivates us and think, well, everyone who does what I do should be motivated by this.
Right.
And it's just not true.
Yeah.
And the second element is that a lot of times, and I just watched, this is very timely, so I just watched a short TED Talk excerpt by Dan Heath, who wrote Switch.
Okay.
It's all about change. It's all about change management. And he said that a lot of times things like laziness and lack of motivation, or what we see on the outside as laziness and lack of motivation, really is just exhaustion. We have so much stuff coming at us at one moment that our brains just cannot process it all. Now, some of this is a discipline issue, right? Because we're allowing ourselves to get distracted by Snapchat and Twitter and Facebook and all of these things that may or may not add to the bottom line, but we're allowing it to control more and more of our lives. And so that becomes exhausting. And then we're also just expected to cover a whole lot more than we've ever been expected to cover before. There are a lot of salespeople who are carrying, pre-sales hats, current sales hats, post-sales hats, customer service hats, and they're trying to be all things to all people, and
Right.
none of us can do that effectively. So I do think there are multiple layers to that quandary. The other side of it is, if you're not motivated by it, you're probably in the wrong place.
Well, and I agree. And I think, there's a lot of people that get enticed by what comes along with a sales career, but aren't necessarily willing to put the work in to be that or to earn that or to get that.
Right.
But I think there are lessons in it both ways. One, if you're not motivated to be at least in the top 10%, if not the top 1% of your field, you got to think about being in the right field.
Right.
It's either got to be a means to an end, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's coming quickly, and so you can just gut it out and go. There are those people who work in order to live, right? They work on assembly lines or they work in sales development roles or whatever it is because there's something better at the end. Great. But if you're really in this for a career and you're just kind of plodding along, doing your best not to get fired, but doing your best not to do so much that they ask you to do more the next year.
Right.
That's where I think there's a big fat part in the middle of the bell curve of salespeople like that.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately then the flip of that is, as a manager, as a sales leader, are you approaching your salespeople like customers? Or are you making the same assumptions about them as the average sales rep makes about their customers?
Right. Have you asked them, what do they want?
What do they really want? What motivates them? So great, if bringing in speakers, if bringing in coaches, if producing podcasts and videos and everything, if that's not motivating your sales team, well, maybe that's just not the way they're motivated. Maybe they're not motivated because you haven't touched them the right way. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss. As salespeople, we make assumptions. We make assumptions that the marketing department gave us all the talking points that we need in order to go out there and sell. But we don't actually think about what it is that our customers need. We don't ask what our customers need. And that's why we don't make nearly as many sales as we can. But then those people who graduate from that role or who really, really excel to the point where the next logical position is management with more money and more responsibility and more leadership, and it looks better on the resume and everything. It's just the next logical step. I think that's why a lot of great salespeople don't make great managers, because they assume that the things that made them great are the things that make everybody great.
Right.
Meanwhile, you've got reps who do just okay, but are killers as managers because they intuitively understand more.
Right. It's interesting. So you remember back when we, in the very beginning of the podcast, we talked about the book Moneyball.
Yeah.
Right. And so they talked in that book a lot about hiring coaches, hitting coaches, for example, that weren't necessarily the best hitters, because a good hitter as a hitting coach wanted you to do it their way.
Yeah.
And that is actually the exact wrong thing to do if you want to really groom the next big hitter in baseball.
Right.
And it works the same way with salespeople. You can't sell my way.
Right.
I can't sell your way. We have to be our own people, and we can be just as successful with completely different approaches if we have a leader and a coach that's actually clearing the way for us and setting it up so that we can do that and be recognized for our own approach.
Right. Coming at it from where you and I come from, it's understanding the fundamentals and understanding the principles of hitting, so to speak,
right,
of selling in our particular examples, of leadership in our particular examples, to stop, take a step back, have a little bit of perspective, and then take the necessary steps to sharpen that pencil, to narrow that focus to how you can actually help the individual. That's what drives me nuts about salespeople. That's what drives me nuts about sales managers. It's the assumptions that if I just paint with a really broad brush,
Right.
and this is the way it goes, because I cover all the bases this way. Okay, but you haven't really inspired your customer to buy. You haven't inspired your prospect to get a meeting with you. You haven't inspired that end-of-the-bench performer on your sales team to get just the 5% better that they need in order to become a more substantial contributor. Great, the motivation's a problem. I get it. But motivation has a solution. Motivation always has a solution. And I just don't think that we look hard enough at all the potential solutions.
Absolutely. Going back to that Dan Heath TED Talk that I mentioned earlier.
Sure.
He also talks about the fact that motivation and self-control is a limited resource.
Yeah.
Meaning that if you are trying to constantly exercise self-control in so many areas of your life because you haven't built a life that is natural to you, you are going to be exhausted. It's going to happen because you just aren't capable as a human being, not you as an individual, but as a human being. Self-control and motivation is an exhaustible resource. It has to come from your core. It's got to be the fire in the belly that keeps you moving so that you can go past the things that aren't so much fun to do.
Right.
I think that's the other element that we miss, is that we keep thinking, oh, if I could just get better, if I could just get more organized, if I could just do this, then it would make things that much better. But ultimately, you've got to figure out how to integrate what's natural for you. And I'm a big believer that there is no such thing as work-life balance. You have to integrate work and life together if you're going to truly be successful. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work at home or bring home to work or any of those things, but you really have to have a peaceful coexistence between work and life if you're going to be your best self. And that's where the fire in the belly comes from. I think you have it. I know I have it. There are a lot of people that we interact with on a daily basis that have it, and a lot of people that we interact with on a daily basis that don't have it.
Right. Right. And I think that when a person doesn't have it, they've got it for something else.
Yes.
There's a very, very small percentage of people who have no fire in their belly.
Right.
So it's just a matter of being able to align that. And I think I like what you said there, in that it's not about work-life balance as much as it's about work-life peaceful coexistence.
Yeah, right. It's not putting these two things on opposite ends of the scale.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's not how that works. You don't draw a line in between and say, okay, no, don't ever cross the streams, right? I mean, to use a Ghostbusters analogy, don't ever cross the stream, right?
Right.
It's not about that. It really is. It is about being full in life. And oh, by the way, I get paid for some of this stuff too.
Right.
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 So Jeff, I don't know that you answered the question. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Oh, wow. Well, what gets me out of bed every morning is getting to do something that I love to do.
Yep.
Speaking of work-life peaceful coexistence, I've got a family that still likes me. And so, I look to them from time to time, actually fairly often. And, how am I doing? What do I need to do more of? What do I need to do less of? And, my wife and I had a talk right around the turn of the year. Actually, she said, it'd be nice. Some nights you work, some nights you don't, but it'd be really nice if we just had one day. Maybe it's Sunday, maybe it's Saturday, whatever day it is. But, can we have one day where you just don't work? And I said, sure. So Sundays, I wasn't going to work. And I don't, for the most part. And the reason I say,
a work in progress.
Well, no, but what I say for the most part is there'd be times where, great, the kids would be playing, Laura would be doing what she's doing, I'm just doing what I'm doing. And it wasn't so much that they wanted my time, they just wanted to know that my time was available. And so that was fine. So now I find myself sitting down doing something I'd rather not be doing, but it wasn't work. So in a roundabout way, I guess, I get so excited about what I do that I don't like to take any time off. So occasionally now I'll work on Sundays. Why? Because the kids are doing what they're doing. Laura's doing what she's doing. And I get to do whatever I want. You know what I want to do? I want to work on this podcast. I want to write. I want to look and see what other people are talking about. I want to take a class. I want to do those things. Sometimes, I just wrote about this recently too. I mean, I still cut my own lawn. Why? Because it gives me something that I get to do that I can be productive while doing it, while keep my mind active on things other than cutting the lawn or folding the laundry or, weeding in the garden or whatever. I love being outside. So for me to be able to put more and more focus on this, that is the thing that has always made me successful in the past, is that thing that I am most passionate about. I spend a lot of waking time or a lot of waking hours on. And this is not work to me. This is the thing I'd rather be doing than just about anything else. So what gets me out of bed every day is knowing that my passion and my expertise and my knowledge for doing this and the unique way that I approach it is so beneficial to other people. My biggest complaint is that, as a small business, still a fledgling business, only been doing this for a couple of years now, that I haven't been able to reach more people yet.
Right.
Because I know that what I have is valuable. And I talk about that and I write about that too. When you prospect, rejection all of a sudden isn't about you. Rejection is, they just don't get it yet. Oh, okay, well, maybe it's not for them. I know it's for them. I know it can help people. I just haven't gotten the message through yet. So you take that responsibility rather than the rejection, and you can turn it into something more productive. When that belief is that strong, right? That you know that your ability and your motivation and your belief are all pointed in the right direction. It's just immensely powerful. And I have that. And that's why I get out of bed as early as I do. and that's why I do so every single day.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's wonderful. Golf helps too, right?
Well, golf helps a lot. Golf helps a lot. So what we're saying today in this little impromptu mini cast is that you've got to have a fire in your belly about something. And I would say that when you have a fire in your belly, you know your why.
I love it. And I tell you, I'll wrap it up on my side by saying, when you understand your ability, you understand your motivation, and you know your attitude's moving in the right direction, there's nothing that can stop you.
And when there's nothing you can stop you, and you know your why, your hows and your whats, by default, get a whole lot better. So keep listening.
I love how that worked.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Hey, thanks for listening to us on the Why and the Buy podcast. If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at the Why and the Buy on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Talk to you next week.
I stayed home all night.
How about the music on this podcast? We call them our house band. They call themselves Haskins, and they're based out of Plymouth, Michigan. If you want to hear more from them, go to haskinsmusic.com and check them out.